Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 5, Episode 1 of the lovely Shot of Nostalgia right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. I'm good old Mike Belcaster, as always, and we are traveling deep into 1985 to start this shit off. It's crazy, man. But joining me, of course, as always, is the host with the most.
Live from No Sale Studios is the Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro, and we are doing a deep dive, as you mentioned, into Saturday night's main event. Not just 1 year, we're going to be covering the extensive catalog of Saturday night's main event and see what it has to offer us. And I know a lot of us are familiar with the moments that have happened here. Obviously, go past, with Hogan, Andre, we've noticed a lot of those things that live in lore. But we are going to do an extensive deep dive with the aid of Dave Meltzer's hard copy newsletters that I have sitting right next to me. I transcribed them digitally. We are the only people in the world that have the transcribed ones. And thank you to, I believe his name was Grant, who sent them over to me from the beautiful United Kingdom for a fee, but well worth it, because as you and I were talking about off air, part of this is building the context. And as far as the first two episodes that we're going to be talking about today, In Ring leaves a lot to be desired, but the parameters of what 1985 meant and where wrestling was is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, it's wild. This is before both of our times. This is a trip beyond where we've started here on Shot of Nostalgia. So I'm very excited to kind of go exploring to a land long in the distance, man. But yeah, so far I'm up for it, man. This is so cool. Obviously, Chad killed it with that beautiful new intro we got there. I'm bumping with the music. I'm rocking and rolling. I'm having a good time like we always do, and I can't wait.
It would not be the same without it. And thank you so much to the One Bad Chad for creating the beautiful overlay, the beautiful intro. We're going to keep the bumpers the same because we love Happy Hour, Chaser, Get Your Fix, and Closing the Tab. It's a beautiful thing. But today, the reason we're here reviewing two events, Saturday night's main event number 1 from May 11th, 1985, headlined by Hogan and Bob Orton for the WWF title from my hometown, Long Island, New York, Nassau Coliseum, and also Saturday night's main event 2 from October 5th, 1985, headlined by Hulk Hogan versus Nikolai Volkov in a flag match for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship in East Rutherford, New Jersey. So a lot on the line here and a lot at stake here for WWF, which was not a guaranteed thing. They just had WrestleMania 1. It was a big deal, and the newsletters are sifting through the fallout of that. It seems like a foregone conclusion, Belcaster, that we would have had WrestleMania 2, 3, and beyond, but none of that was guaranteed, and we didn't have that picture quite yet. WWF was still kind of growing into what we know them as Titan Sports.
Yeah, no, that's the crazy thing to take away from it too, is like we're kind of watching the beginning of it. Like, I know WrestleMania, obviously a huge deal, but going back to the times where there was no Raw, there was no SmackDown, we weren't talking about ratings and everything going all over the place. It's insane to see. I love watching how the whole concept become what it is. And that's the whole fun of Shot of Nostalgia, man.
And the goal of this show and, our show here is to get the idea of what they were intending this to be, and utilizing the context of Dave Meltzer in the newsletter in 1985 brings us back there, because he doesn't have the benefit of knowing what's going to be happening in 2023. The conglomerate, the monstrosity, whatever, the mothership that WWE became was not guaranteed. And the wrestling landscape had all these promotions, and WrestleMania 1 was bucking the trend of what wrestling was supposed to be. And in a lot of ways, Vince McMahon was ostracized by the wrestling community for doing that. And that risk, even Vince Sr., it wasn't something he wanted to do. He was respecting the lineage and the lore of what wrestling was. For him the word is monopolized, but for him to sort of build this super ship of wrestling was unheard of. And you see a lot of the trails in the newsletter of how pissed everyone really is across the wrestling landscape, all promoters all across the world.
And that's sign me up for all that. We just got done with one of the most dramatic seasons with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, so I'm going into this. I'm all now. I need the tea, as the kids like to say. Spill the tea.
With that being said, let's get to the happy hour and talk about what's happened in May of 1985.
Happy hour.
Oh, Dusty Daddy, Dragathon along, baby.
Dusty's in his heyday here in 1985, where we're going to be talking about the other side of the wrestling war, and it's the NBC TV show being discussed here, Saturday night's main event. And Meltzer first mentioned this on the 5/4/85 newsletter, where he says the NBC TV show airing 11:30 p.m. Eastern on 5/11 will be taped 5:10 at the Nassau Coliseum. And he says, I expect they'll pull out all the stops for this one, and this will be an entertaining show. And he kind of talks about some of the storylines going on here, and we can kind of see them plant the seeds for it during the show. And he says, it's no secret that Orndorff transition will climax that show. And he says, I believe Orndorff will be in Piper's Pit, and that gorgeous George Steele will become a babyface, managed by Lou Albano after a dispute with Volkov and Sheik and 6-man opponents. So he's talking about the logistics of going on there, but notably is the time. And wrestling, and we'll speak about it extensively throughout this season. In 1985, wrestling was not at the peak interest that it will hit. Everyone looks at 85 as the golden age of WrestleMania 1, but as far as building an awareness in the mainstream media of pro wrestling, it just didn't exist yet. And this is the risk that they are taking. They want NBC, which is in a lot of homes, national TV, for them to kind of slowly introduce the general public to wrestling, become accustomed to it, that it's not this carny backyard type of thing that you kind of lie about watching. They want it to become this general entertainment that it really became today. I think they'd be shocked at what it actually became, but even then, to slowly introduce it to the NBC audience was a tough task.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, you think about NBC now, how big of a monstrosity it's become on the corporate side of things and everything else, but like there's maybe 10 channels back in 85. So I mean, this is in almost every home, I would assume. I obviously before we knew, but yeah, you're talking clickers on the television, you're talking, moving the rabbit antennas to get the perfect picture. You're introducing pro wrestling on a grander scale, on a more entertaining scale, not just the local gymnasium at the or the VFW hall where they're running these small shows. This is big time as Vince wants to make it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big piece here, is that NBC is the key to this. They have entertainment shows across the globe that's not just about, one sort of section of the entertainment landscape. It's sports, it's sitcoms, it's other types of TV, it's the news, and pro wrestling is going to try to wedge itself in there, or Vince McMahon's trying to try to jam it down people's throats because he believes he has what is going to be an accepted form of entertainment. And people didn't know it yet. And I think when they start to see, and you'll see some of the feedback here in the newsletter and from different outlets of news that we pulled here for this episode, that wrestling needed a facelift. And whether it needed a facelift from anyone else's perspective with Vince's remains to be determined. But he wanted to really burn it down the way it used to be and build it in his image. And I think that's kind of what he did. If we kind of sift through the results of that as we sit in 2023, he kind of got his way, and he was planting those seeds right here.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to see how far we've come, but Vince had a very, very good vision. And I mean, through hiccups, through mountains, through valleys, peaks and valleys, always you find your way. And WWF, WWE, Vince McMahon, they found their way to become the biggest pro wrestling company in the world, right? It's insane.
A big draw to the Saturday night's main event stuff. It's the NBC and the celebrities being tossed into this, and we're going to get a lot of people coming in and out. We're going to see the emergence of Arnold Schwarzenegger in the crowd. That is intentional. We're going to see Tiny Tim involved. Any sort of celebrity that's relevant in 1985 throughout Saturday night's main event will be featured. And that was sort of the relationship we've seen evolving over the course of the build to WrestleMania 1, tying it with Mr. T, also the rock and roll, tie with MTV, the music and wrestling type of flair. But we also have Wendy Richter being someone who they're really focused on here, and they're trying to figure out who's going to be her opponent. And they're going to be saying it's Mad Maxine. And you and I were talking about it off air. Mad Maxine had a short cup of coffee here, had a very unique look, kind of like the All Japan women type of look. 6'4", staggering. She could have been a huge star in wrestling, but there's a lot to be said about her in the news as of, a couple years ago. Unsure if you're familiar with that story with the Fabulous Moolah stuff that came out with her new book.
I heard some ramblings of it. I didn't deep dive into it, but I do get the gist of it. So please enlighten our beautiful listeners here on what's the deal is.
Just want to put context on Mad Maxine. Not that we want to go deep into the Moolah, stuff. They pulled Moolah from the WWE being mentioned. She's no longer has her name on the tournament. This is why the allegations that came out. And Mad Maxine's not the only person to come out and say this, but it's a book she came out called The Chronicles of Mad Maxine. And it's not a memoir, but rather a fictionalized account of her experiences. And she's pretty much says that Fabulous Moolah, her stranglehold, for lack of a better term, on the wrestling women's sector. If you didn't work through her, you weren't getting booked. And there were some things where she was like pimping girls out, or the term that she was using. And they had to exchange things that, you shouldn't have to exchange as an employer or employee, I should say, as a promoter. And she was being asked to do these things, and she shed a light on this. And Mad Maxine was quickly out. Like, she was introduced here in 1985, and I think she had 2 matches, something like that. And then she was done because she wanted nothing to do with the wrestling business. And she waited years and years to talk about her experiences. And she shined a light on a situation that, Moolah is gone. 2007, she passed away, but the allegations are not new. And apparently, according to all of the people involved in this, there's a lot of backlash for it, but it was very accurate. And just want to mention Mad Maxine here because in a lot of ways, she shed a light on something that should have been exposed. We talk about the growth of women's wrestling, the growth of where wrestling is today. You could thank someone like Mad Maxine, among other people, to come out and tell their story, because it was jarring to read. When I saw her name, I'm like, that sounds familiar. And as I started doing more of the deep dive, I'm like, yeah, this is where I remember her from.
Yeah, no. And I mean, listen, wrestling was a different ballgame back then. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago, it's insane. So you're thinking how insane, there's probably a lot of this going on, not just on the women's side of things, but probably in the men's side of thing as well. And no form of entertainment comes from bright, shiny fields. There's some grim, dark alley that you got to crawl through to get your way to the top. So I'm Poetic Justice, happy to see somebody shed the light on it, even so far removed from it. But I mean, it definitely speaks up for all the female wrestlers from that time and going forward as well.
Yeah, and I think also it puts in perspective how far women's wrestling at large has come, and it means so much to see women main event pay-per-views and WrestleMania, and to see where it came and on their merits in the ring, and seeing them get put in a fantastic light and the growth we've seen. So seeing things like that really kind of show us and makes you proud to see where women's wrestling is. And there's still so much further for it to go, but to see how, 40 years is a long period of time, but it's also not that long. I mean, not that much has changed in the world. It's amazing to see how much growth and how seriously women's wrestling is taken, when in a time where, you had your Wendy Richters, you had the other type of the Fabulous Moolahs being shown on our screen, but it was not looked at in the same light, didn't have the same weight as men's wrestling. And it deserves to have that nowadays.
Absolutely.
So we also have the numbers of the financials about what NBC was paying Vince McMahon for each monthly episode. And this is according to Meltzer in the newsletter. And again, 1985. And he said, I was told that NBC will pay McMahon $204,000 for each monthly episode, not $450,000 as McMahon told Sports Illustrated. And he said, I was given $612,000 tag total for 3 shows, May, June, and July. As of right now, Belcaster, they're only committed to do 3 episodes. So Meltzer talks about and conjectures and identifying that WWF wants to do a weekly TV show. That's not in the cards yet. No one's really doing a weekly TV show on a national scale. Of course, we have the locals, the territories that are running their shows in their local markets on probably syndicated TV on their own. But as far as national landscape, to do that it's a very huge task to do this. And even do it on a monthly basis on NBC is a big deal. So they get this is their tryout, May, June, and July, to see if they can make it work. And we know, we'll talk about the shows at large, what they were perceived to have done. But this is a big jump, and this is a big commitment on NBC side, which I'm curious to hear, like Dick Ebersol and what he felt about wrestling, and his relationship with Vince is fascinating to me whenever they speak about each other. And, you even go with the XFL stuff, like they have this relationship, and inevitably they wound up back with NBC too. What I'm saying? Like NBC wound up being the home where the WWE network lives. And that's maybe serendipity, maybe it's poetic in some ways, but May, June, and July right now is what we're committed to. And even back in 85, though, Meltzer's laying the seeds for what would be potentially Raw. Like that's what he was saying. Yeah. They need a weekly TV, and that's something they want to be done. And I think that's what Vince had seen early on in 85.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very curious on the inflation numbers from like what $204,000 per show. I mean, would translate to now. I mean, that's got to be a huge deal. So very interesting. But the fact that WWE, WWF, Vince, they all kind of fell back into the NBC universal world is pretty interesting. I like to hear that Meltzer kind of laboring towards getting a weekly show. I mean, back then it would have been life-changing for so many wrestlers, so many talent, and WWF in general.
So I'm going to go May 85. I can type in the amount of money on this inflation calculator right here, live on air. And we're going to put $204,000 per episode. And then we're going to do it for August of 2023. And we're going to figure out the exact amount once I can find it. But until I'm able to do that, let's just talk about what he had said about the weekly TV. And he says, don't be surprised if they go weekly with this thing in the fall. He said, the monthly show is a way to slowly break wrestling in without too much negative publicity. And hopefully it'll already be an established audience when parts of the society have better taste. Come on down to NBC, and the negative publicity can be used as positive benefit. And he puts in quote, more publicity equals more curiosity and hopefully better. So that's the mindset too. Even go back to Eric Bischoff when he's like, controversy creates cash. The idea is to slowly integrate it and kind of get people accustomed to it in their society, where it's not this jarring pro wrestling as people know it, this Southern type of entertainment on their national TV screens. They want to make it cartoony. They want to make it over the top. They want to make it campy because that's the entertainment they're looking for. And WWF in a lot of ways became larger than life. They wanted to redefine, and that's what they did. They're not pro wrestling. They say that they're sports entertainment. Yeah. They wanted from the jump not to be put in the same box as WCW or AWA or UFW. They wanted to be their own entertainment value. And I think, again, going back to 2023, they accomplished that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you could tell by some of the segments of the two shows we covered here. And going forward, there's a more emphasis on the entertainment aspect, and we're seeing more backstage outside of the venue segments. You're getting Georgie Animal Steel running around a zoo, for God's sakes. The entertainment value is being more presented than the actual wrestling. I think the wrestling is the bridge that gets us to where we need to go. But I think the storytelling here is where Vince really wants to shine.
So with the inflation calendar or calculator here, there is an 184.1% increase since the year 1985. So if you pay $204,000, you'd be paying $579,562.86 for the same item, which is still, looking at the cost of things, still a very good deal. If you look at the amount of money on the other side that NBC is paying to have WWE on their network, guaranteed, it's a very good deal. So they made out here, but again, WWE was not the brand that they were, but still a risk on both sides that they're able to sit here and develop this relationship that is very fruitful and still continues to be to this day.
Yeah, that's insane, man.
So he said, I've actually begun watching the TV shows from time to time. Weekend of 420, I watched half the shows. And he said, being that I've already accepted the changes that have been made in the business, I'm beginning to get a kick out of the weirdness of it. So Meltzer, he's 24 years old in 1985. He's a wrestling fan at heart, and he's very critical on the in-ring stuff. You and I were going to talk about it extensively, about what he thought about it, calling it Saturday Night's travesty, all that stuff. So literally, he said it right here. Being that I've already accepted the changes that have been made in the business, I'm beginning to get a kick out of the weirdness of it. That speaks volumes to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because there is some weirdness into it. And even rewatching these, I'm like, the hell is going on here? There's a lot of format is all over the roof. The segments, they're absolutely batshit crazy at points, but they're very entertaining. And so I feel with them. I'm getting a kick out of the weirdness, but I do wish the in-ring work had a little more to the stuff.
So he talks about the weirdness, and he said the weirdest scene, however, was Orndorff firing Bobby Heenan as manager. He says it seems like they like to rewrite reality so much that we're now told Heenan has been managing Orndorff for years. And that's the other thing I felt interesting, because even since 1985, if that is the inception of WWE as we know it, they have been redefining what fans see on their screen as what is truth and what's not truth, and changing statistics, changing match finishes, changing the way the narrative goes. And we always know that history is written by the victor. Yeah. And even here, this is a small thing, but Orndorff was not managed by Bobby Heenan. They're pretending that he was. Paul Orndorff is not managed by Bobby Heenan, but they're acting like it's a big deal that they're now breaking up because their relationship was so long. That's a small brainwashing tactic that they even then it's state-run media WWE. They want people to believe what their narrative is and only that narrative.
Yeah, Vince is always keen on telling his story. Nobody else is, and this is just a part of that, man. It's crazy to see.
And he also says, since WrestleMania, apparently McMahon is now instituting a 3-week on, 1 week off schedule for most of his performers. And Meltzer says, the idea of having a week off each month is so new to wrestling that I doubt we'll be seeing many defections away from the WWF in the near future. Who would want to go to an area and make less money and have no vacation time instead of having 1 week off per month? And that's a good point. And schedule it has become a huge piece of negotiation tactics for WWE and AEW, and AEW has been that soft landing spot where they were at one point working once a week. No house shows. It was just once a week, and then every month you'd have a pay-per-view or a big event, something like that. And 4 pay-per-views to start, now 5 with Forbidden Door.
Yeah.
But even then, Meltzer's recognizing that WWF had the better schedule, because if you hear all those stories of lore of Ric Flair traveling to towns, wrestling 6 to 7 times in like the span of 3 days, like grinding his body, to have the money, the people stood no chance. The bright lights, the comfortable schedule, and just the less work rate. You're not having to kill your body to do the stuff that they want you to do in WWF. It's not about that.
Yeah, no, and that's a very crazy thing to see too, is because I mean we've had so many tales coming from our childhood of our heroes that we've seen in the ring about how treacherous the schedule was, working so much, not being, I mean, you'd have 52 weeks a year, you'd be working 50, it's insane. So seeing this implemented here tells me that Vince had his mindset on longevity, kind of trying to make give you a little time off, heal yourself, work yourself through, and then go back to the grind. It's crazy.
Yeah, and all about stealing the stars of each promotion. We know WrestleMania 1 was built on the backs of other promotions and other stars, and from all across the globe, they become people that are established elsewhere, but become part of the WWE machine. But the other thing he's talking about is how the crowds are down, and they've been down since WrestleMania, all across wrestling. Whatever that's a blow off, people just feel like wrestling's in a different space. Like all the local territories are down. But he also says other promotions are even worse shape than WWE right now, or WWF, I should say, with all the TV branching out starting in September. I don't think the live gates will be nearly as much of a concern as they had been in the past. So yeah, this is interesting too, because wrestling, again, they hit its peak soon. At the end of this year, they're going to start grinding towards this Hulkamania era, where all this golden age of wrestling. But at this point, crowds are down. So it also puts in perspective how much of a risk WrestleMania 1 really was, that wrestling was not, as we were saying before, an accepted form of entertainment. And now looking at it through this lens, it's crazy to see, because I think, and we're going to talk about this SI article where Vince McMahon literally wanted to burn wrestling to the ground and redefine it in his image. Yeah,
no, that's crazy.
So we have a certain amount of celebrities being here, and this was the first time we're hearing about it. Cameos during the NBC shows to further propagate what Meltzer calls the big lie, just about just how wrestling is part of the mainstream culture. They want to have this aesthetic where, I mean, again, go back to you referenced before having the dial on your TV and only have a short amount of channels on the screen for you to choose from. If you tell somebody that wrestling is this accepted form of entertainment, that Cyndi Lauper's there and Tiny Tim and Arnold Schwarzenegger and all these people are on your screens, people start to kind of accept that as true. And Meltzer calls it the big lie, which is kind of this propaganda mission for them to infiltrate into mainstream culture. And they did that, though. And being on NBC was the first step there, but capitalizing on it and creating this larger than life character and getting them on your screens. And we're going to be talking about how, in the next newsletter, about Piper and Hogan are doing these soap operas. They're infiltrating mainstream media, which is what wrestling tried to stay away from for the longest period of time.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And like just thinking about that, it reminds me of when The Rock hosted Saturday Night Live, and Vince kind of brought in the boys to kind of be there so they can get in on it too, like Mick Foley and the Big Show and Triple H, and like that. He's always been trying to infiltrate the other side of the market. It's insane.
So that SI article that they're talking about from 1985, it has a lot of awesome quotes and a really long conversation about WWF and being with MTV and the rock and roll connection and just how it's popular in culture, which was a huge driving point. It's that famous, I think Chalkline has the jacket with Hogan on that article from SI. It's like it's very influential in as far as setting the tone for the acceptance of WWF in the mainstream. And Meltzer is quoted in this. He's 24 years old, like I said. And he said, one thing that McMahon's critics object to most frequently is the way he has tampered with wrestling's traditional, if theatrical, mix. And the quote from Meltzer was, what separates McMahon's philosophy from everyone else is that he deliberately tries to make everything as ridiculous as possible, whereas most of the others manage to do it unintentionally. And he says the TV ratings have been good for the last 10 years, but when McMahon started bragging about them, suddenly people began to notice. Then you'll hear, wow, they're selling at the Garden every month. Well, wrestling has been selling at the Garden every month for the past 15 years. And what about the new demographics? That's all a New York phenomenon, Meltzer continued. And he said, I go to WWF shows out here. It's the same demographics as it's always been. The only difference is that WWF is a lot rowdier because they do the whole ethnic thing to incite the crowd. And he went in on them a bit about just overexposing xenophobic, racist type of stuff, like over the top. And that a lot of the characters you see in the early 90s and late 80s is, over the top, villains of, trying to make sure that they're emphasizing race baiting. I mean, you can even go down the list where they're like, they're pushing every sensitive button they can to get people to react. And, he referenced Junkyard Dog as being like, he was this articulate, great promo in New Orleans, and he brought here and they made him into, he didn't cut a promo. He just was this, a guy that was not that guy. And that's what he, but Junkyard Dog defended his choice going to WWF all the way through, saying that he's making over, double the amount of money he was making elsewhere. And even as the biggest star, and he's doing less of the work. So how can you fault everyone for going over there?
No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you greener pastures in the wallet and in the mindset. You're working less schedule. You get to not be so. I guess when you get to go out there and be a little bit goofier of a character, you get to embellish a lot more. You're not working as hard as you probably would be in some of the territories, and I mean that's good for anybody who's hired to go there to work. You know what I mean? So why would you argue it?
There was another interesting quote in this article on SI from Big John Studd, and he said, TV is the most important part of our profession. It's actually more important than what we do in the ring. And in the article, SI just clarifies that, as we were saying before, some of the wrestlers work as many as 10 matches a week, and then include that with the studio shows where they're recording. So these guys are banging their bodies up. So they want guaranteed money. And this is the start of offering money, not to the level that we see now, but they're starting to gain more leverage where the stars are having a little bit of this. And, obviously Hollywood and the glitz and the glam and the spotlight creates another energy too, where wrestling doesn't have to be this secluded type of entertainment. You can become a bigger star, as we see with all these guys at WWF. You put the machine behind them, one hand washes the other, and all of a sudden you have this huge star that's, like Hulk Hogan, that it transcends. If you don't even watch wrestling, people know who he is. And that's the type of stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
The final piece here in this newsletter from May, he says Cincinnati, which does radio broadcasts of WWF shows, plugs WWF incessantly, they say. And he said the mayor of Cincinnati proclaimed April 25th as Roddy Piper Day and April 26th as Hulk Hogan Day. So it just kind of shows the generalization of wrestling in the pop culture. And I don't think those days are included in the Cincinnati calendar today, but even then it just shows again, because I don't think they were getting any other wrestlers having that type of publicity in a day like that from the mayor.
No, absolutely.
So we'd go to the 6/1/1985 newsletter. And Meltzer says, for the most part, crowds continue to be way down, which can be attributed to WrestleMania, of course, but lots of it is also because that although the networks and sponsors don't know it yet, interest in wrestling is falling fast. So he goes into the numbers, and we'll go through them quickly. In the SI article, WWF likes to laud that they sold out MSG all these amount of times, and they continue to do that. But MSG was being sold out well before Vince was doing it. It was a hotbed. Your thoughts on 1985 and wrestling being down? And we talk about the cyclical nature of wrestling. 94 was another time that was down. There is bright spots for sure.
Yeah.
But the wrestling business is always cyclical. And I think in 2023, we're at the top of it, but it's always a roller coaster, dude.
Always. No, absolutely. It's very interesting to see Meltzer kind of calling it too. Like, wrestling, the fandom's falling. Like, it happens every so often, much like a lot of the aspects of entertainment do. Like, hip hop goes through these same stages where it's the top of the music charts and then it's not. And likewise with anything else. But to see it here being attendance is down, all this stuff, the worry about it. It's laughable in retrospective because of how successful, especially WWF has become. And it's weird to think like what could have been if wrestling didn't take off. Maybe by 93 it was done.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought, man?
I mean, we see other promotions that kind of shine bright and then disappear, but WWF kind of they pushed the right buttons. As you can see, this is another one. The relationship with NBC, if they didn't do that, if they didn't continue on with taking risks, putting their chips in the middle of the table with NBC, with WrestleMania 1, and do that, we're seeing the results of that right here. But at the time, you don't see the tree growing fruit until years later. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're in the immediate. They were only 2 months removed from WrestleMania 1. Like, so they are still kind of like, did it work? Did it not work? I'm not sure. But we also see this crowd down at MSG, and Meltzer says that even in the past 11 shows at the Garden haven't sold out. And he says, does anyone recall how many decades it's been since that's ever happened?
Wow.
So if you're using MSG as a barometer of the success in wrestling, of course, New York is a hotbed. That's like kind of the home of WWF, and them not selling out is a big thing. And we talk about even the first ever Saturday Night's Main Event episode that we're going to be talking about here, Nassau Coliseum, 8,300 people. And Meltzer, this is for the NBC show, and actually it's a good crowd in the building. However, if one considers that the great Mr. T and fantastic draw Cyndi Lauper were there, plus the Piper's Pit with Orndorff and Hulk Hogan, this has got to be a very disappointing crowd. I think it's being tough on it. 8,300 people is a lot. Especially for an unknown. No one knows what Saturday Night's Main Event is. It has not an established brand. People are not used to attending things that are pay-per-views, big events. We don't know. Like, they're used to just seeing live events on a monthly basis, not these kind of flagship level promotional events that are coming in with celebrities. So I think it would take time to get momentum. As we see, of course, it gets momentum over time.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, with any new programming, any new kind of concept like that, you have to take account for the time it's going to take to build a following. Absolutely. And that's, I mean, I see 8,300 people. That's a shitload of people for, hey, we're starting this thing up. I mean, so that, I mean, I would consider that a win in today's day and age, let alone in 1985.
So he talks about the Orndorff and Piper feud that we see the seeds laid during the Saturday Night Main Event episodes, but also he says Piper and Hogan will appear on daytime soap, the show called Search for Tomorrow, for the week of 6/18 to 6/26. And Meltzer says, do I have to tell you what network that appears on? Clearly NBC. This is that hand over hand thing that they're working together with. And, they're helping these shows out. Wrestling fans will tune in to Search for Tomorrow. And people that are watching Search for Tomorrow that see Hogan and Piper may tune in to watch Saturday Night's Main Event. And that's how you build a broader audience. And that's the goal. Yeah. And this is not the same time. You don't have all the options. You don't have Hulu, Netflix, even DVDs. You were kind of watching what the networks had, and you could definitely turn it to CBS. You can go to a different channel, but in the household, sometimes NBC was just on, and then whatever was on was what was going to be introduced into your cultural acceptance. And that was what they were banking on. And I think it actually worked out.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've seen, it's funny because it starts here, but I mean, going into talk shows, going into, a Boy Meets World with Vader, there's so many different outlooks where wrestling has crossed that line of going into the sitcom, going into the national television market. And it's so crazy that they start with Search for Tomorrow, man.
So he gets the ratings for the first ever Saturday Night's Main Event. He says ratings for the NBC show were good, not great. SNL reruns averaged 10.2 and a 26 share, while Vince got 9.8 and a 27 share. He said, considering that was his debut, that's not impressive, as they had to expect it to beat SNL. Or why wouldn't they just keep on SNL in that spot? And he said they got ratings approaching 14, near 40 in New York, Detroit, and Boston. In Dallas, they got a single-digit share, which is a disaster. But then again, no doubt they got killed by Fritz, who runs in the same show on a lowly indie in the same market, exact same time. And he also kind of is looking at these numbers and still no word if the show will be renewed. But with all the work NBC has done trying to get wrestling over, I'd be shocked if it wasn't. So yeah, NBC is in this. The right person was sitting in the seat, and maybe it was Dick Ebersol, maybe it was someone else that was pitching it and saying, no, let's stick with it. I see it. And whoever that person was, we should be thankful for them, because Absolutely. They kind of created this acceptance of wrestling for us. And whether you prefer this style of wrestling, some people look about Saturday Night's Main Event 1985 WWF with, glitz and glamour and a glimmering love for nostalgia. But some people, again, people in the business probably look at this style of wrestling as a bastardization of the style. And if not for that, though, like we wouldn't have the beautiful work rate we have today, if that makes sense. Because this is what everything stretches from. Like if the wrestling world orbits around WWE. And if we didn't have the big sun with everyone going around it, all these, who knows what they would base it on. I think the initial interest in wrestling for a lot of people was always WWE. And for me as a child, that was what it was. And so I think we have them to thank for it, especially. And NBC took a risk on this.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I just thinking about it, like how you said, when we were children, this is what we thought wrestling was. And I mean, how long into our lives did it take us to find an alternative and like let it stick? You know what I mean? WCW was there, but I didn't watch WCW a lot until the Monday Night Wars. And I don't know, same thing with here. But it's crazy to see NBC so ready to roll with this. And they're sticking to their guns. They want to make it work. Vince is willing to do whatever. NBC's a great partner to have for that. I mean, we wouldn't have the growth of WWF without this partnership. I absolutely believe.
So we also had this segment on a show called Sports World, and this puts in perspective. We see WWE has a relationship with ESPN. We see them hype shows before SummerSlam. Paul Heyman was on there. Triple H was on there. Commonplace. We see it all the time. But at this time, there's a stigma with professional wrestling as being fake and being scripted and not the same as sports. So they were trying their best to put wrestling or a wrestling segment on Sports World, but Meltzer said it was a bomb, one of the lowest ratings the series got all season. He says the show itself was a big disappointment. He says, I don't watch these things for wrestling, but I figured that they had done such a good job with MTV in February, they'd be able to come through at least once or twice for NBC, but of course they didn't. So yeah, I mean, that the big piece here is that the sport fandom, and it's still today, like there's still a certain sect of UFC fans and sport fans that look at wrestling as fake. And then you'll see comments sometimes if one of the clips like we share on Turnbuckle Tavern goes viral or whatever, and you'll see comments like, why is this fake shit on my page? But I think the crossover of sports fans and wrestling fans became a little bit more. I think there's been a lot more, and maybe that has to do with ESPN and putting them on our screen and seeing interviews and results. There's a WWE tab on that now. And if you consider ESPN the worldwide leader in sports, as they like to consider themselves as, WWE having a little thing, and they even cover AEW now.
Yeah. There's
pieces on there that they cover AEW. So it's a big deal.
No, a huge deal. It's the acceptance. It's real. You know, we consider it real. I mean, 10 years ago, we couldn't bet on wrestling. Now I mean, I'm sure you could have if you worked hard enough. I mean, now you can go on DraftKings and pick your bets for any event, and like it's legitimacy. Like that's at the end of the day, that's what that stands up for. It's crazy.
So the final piece of this newsletter says a few late notes about McMahon's TV show on NBC. The best part is he continues to call it the show on NBC or McMahon's show or Vince's show. He refuses to call it WWF, or he refuses to call it Saturday Night's Main Event. Maybe that will change. But the first couple of newsletters, he just calls it McMahon's TV show. He said the poor quality of the first show, plus the fact that the ratings weren't really up to what they wanted, since it was the sweeps week. For a normal week, the ratings would have been fine. They have cooled off on wrestling. And he said, doubtful there'll be a weekly show in the fall at this point. They would have to been caught in their deception, even if it had gone. The network and Vince were selling ads baked on a 50 to 25 age demo. The same audience would watch as SNL. As everyone knows, while Vince reaches some people in that age group, the majority of his fans don't fall into that group, and NBC wanted to use wrestling primarily to target advertisements. So yeah, they're trying to do the crossover here. And demographics, we hear Chris Jericho became the demo god. And we see the 18 to 21, the 18 to 41, I believe it is the demo that AEW likes to laud in, and they like to say that they capture that one. Clearly, WWF is trying to get a younger skewed audience. They want, and you could say with the screen, we watched the 2 episodes. It's a very child-oriented promotion. It's about larger-than-life characters, superheroes come to life, and you could tell that's what they're gearing towards.
No, absolutely. I can't imagine a Saturday Night Live fan base watching this and being like, I loved it. You know, so it's very interesting to see that that's the demographic that they're going for here.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing because you look, and again, this is all through the lens of WWF controlling the narrative, or WWE, I should say, nowadays. about what was popular and how explosive it was. They show the highlights of the connection with MTV and the NBC and SNL and everything that gets baked into this, like, again, history of WWF, WWE. I wonder what was true and what's not now that you're reading these in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, how much of it was just like exaggeration and rewriting history, as we see even so clearly just in the moment. The Paul Orndorff and Bobby Heenan thing being, just tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're today they control their narrative and they tell you what to believe.
It is wild to see.
Inflating attendances, no matter whatever.
Money payments. Yeah, we were getting paid $400,000 an episode. Damn it!
So on the 10/17/1985 newsletter, which is the last one we're going to go through, Meltzer is not happy. And he said Saturday Night's main travesty 2 took place 10/5 on NBC TV for all the country to see. The one good thing about this wrestling war is that every time the WWF has a chance to deliver a solid knockout punch to its competitors, it puts on shows like last week. He honestly said that it wasn't so much boring, just really something that didn't draw him in. And that's a worse indictment on the show. I think it elicited a strong reaction. Of course, he called it the Saturday Night's main travesty, which he'll shift his tone next week, guys, when we cover the show. He won't be as hard on it, but there's a lot in here about being very critical of Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. You could tell there's a certain style that he's always like. 24-year-old Meltzer definitely had a flair for the Japanese strong work rate, and he wasn't getting with WWF.
He's part of the Saturday Night Live demographic, man. He doesn't want to see this shit on his TV.
He says to say the matches were atrocious would be being kind. Hulk Hogan has become not only one of the worst wrestlers around, but a genuine pain in the ass.
Damn.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe because this was being mailed, he was a little more free with his words. You'll never hear him say things like that. I mean, nowadays, I'm 24 is a different age. You're a different
100%.
person.
Yeah.
And I guess not knowing this, because this is something, if you're a subscriber, you're obviously a fan of the Wrestling Observer. This is not as easily accessible that would go. Can you imagine? He said that about someone today. It would be in a tweet immediately and be on someone's on Instagram immediately.
Yeah, he'd be dragged through the mud, man. It's very. Very crazy to see.
He also says the lack of reaction comparatively to Hulk Hogan as compared to just 2 months ago was astounding, although it was probably because live fans in Jersey could see even what a joke the evening turned out to be. So Hulk Hogan, we talk about all the time that, I mean, this is 85 though. Like this is the first Hulk thing. We're 2 months in, and he's already saying that his reaction is kind of dwindling, but I don't see that. I mean, he's still very much over when you're watching live. And we have the perspective of seeing where it goes when fans didn't want him around anymore in like 92, 93.
Yeah.
He starts to become, but he's still very much hot, and he's going to get hotter by 87, 88. Fans are well into this. And I think Meltzer might be off base. He's a little reactionary here. I honestly, maybe because I'm expecting these shows to be a certain type of way, I was not turned off by it at all. I thought it was a solid entertaining hour that was kind of a variety show. It was one of those things I was looking through the lens of, this is what I expect from Saturday Night's Main Event. I'm not looking for, a Masawa match. I'm looking for just, the entertainment of the old school campy level of WWF.
No, 100%. It's got listen, if you go into it wanting to see 10-star matches, that's your fault for setting your expectations that high. I highly went into this with lower expectations. I still enjoyed the shit out of it. So, it's wild, man.
So you talked about the wedding that we'll cover when we get to getting your fix, but he says there wasn't much to like or dislike about the wedding, considering they need a hook like this to sell shows to NBC. I have no right to cut down the idea, which I thought was a good perspective to have. These type of shows need that drawing, and you can even talk about even further in the future when they have the Miss Elizabeth Macho Man wedding. You got to bring the casuals in. Someone who's not a fan of the live action. There might be someone watching that might be drawn into the romance or the pageantry of whatever type of drama. You have to do a catch-all, and that's what WWE has become. They've become their own little buffet eco center where they're tossing things at a wall, and there's certain things, as they say on the show, even today, for everybody. But here they have that idea. They want it to be a variety show. There's going to be something for everyone on here. So they're not going to just be strictly wrestling, wall-to-wall wrestling, and that was emerging here in 85. That same mindset exists today.
Yeah, I mean, you have to capture the casual I mean, not even the casual, the outside fan base. Like, and the only way you could do that is by utilizing other like forms of entertainment, a la talk show segments, a la weddings. Like it adds to the overall picture. So I wouldn't even call this a wrestling show. The wrestling is so subpar. It's the pieces in between that really are there to draw in the fan base. And I think this is how you create your own fan base here. Like, I mean, you talk about Jericho and MJF singing, popping, they did the dinner of Deboir, whatever the hell it was called. And it was great, right? That's how you bring in people. That was all over the social media, for a week after. It was the hottest thing you could possibly see. And I think that's what WWF was doing here, but in the form of 1985.
Yeah, and I think that's also a really good perspective. Like if you went in expecting something different, it's like ordering vanilla ice cream and being mad at that doesn't taste like chocolate. Like it's not as like you ordered vanilla. Like you're tuning in to watch this. So I don't, for him being angry about watching and being critical of the work rate, like what did you expect? This is not, if you watch WrestleMania 1, if you continue to watch WWF on a weekly basis or a monthly basis in this case in 1985, there's nothing for you to believe that the work rate would be something you could be proud to watch. It's about the storytelling, the larger than life characters. So I would volley back to him and be like, again, what did you expect? You ordered the wrong thing on the menu, sir.
Very well put.
The last thing we have here is State Senator Abraham Bernstein of New York's committee to discuss banning pro wrestling in New York State opened its hearing on 10/8/1985. So Meltzer had some eyewitnesses there. He said, if you don't consider just how pathetic things are like this in terms of waste of money, it was funnier than Vince's TV show 3 nights earlier. He said, I'm told that the exception of Irv Mushnick, nephew of Sam Mushnick, who's writing a book on pro wrestling. We always see the Mushnicks. They're New York Post dude. That's the guy who hates wrestling. They said that no one really knew idea what they were talking about, but they're referencing just kind of the bad influence they're having on young children and teenagers watching Roddy Piper, getting bad ideas, coalitions against violence on TV. So Meltzer kind of talked about this starting. He said there's no chance that wrestling will be banned in New York State, but does reference a lot of interesting stuff about athletic commissions. I mean, having to abide by certain rules. And your thoughts on this? I mean, they're in for a rude awakening if they think 1985 wrestling is going to be poisoning the youth. Wait till ECW 1998 comes in. Same thing with the Attitude Era, where Mae Young is given birth to a hand. But yeah, and there's always, the right to censor was created in that image as tongue in cheek. But this was, I never knew about this. And I guess because it really went nowhere, but I guess there's always been a movement to rid the world of professional wrestling.
Well, I think it's a sign of the times as well. Like in 85, you beautifully said it. Just wait until ECW comes in here. Like wait until you see Buell McGillicuddy take a pile driver from Tommy Dreamer. But 85. I mean, there was a lot of that kind of push where people Dare became a thing. You're building all into that, and the worried parentals out there that. My son watched Hulk Hogan body slam, and he did it to little Jeffrey 2 days later in the living room, and it broke his arm. Like it's you get that with anything. Like if this was a motocross show, they'd be like, "Oh my god, the motorcycles are fucking violent." My son broke his damn neck. Like it goes with anything. That you flavor it with. So they're just picking at pro wrestling at this point.
So there is a conversation here, which is so. I mean, the foresight of Meltzer here was saying pro wrestling could use some changes. However, people who don't understand the mechanics of the business aren't about to understand or realize what changes should be made. He continues, as things stand right now, they ought to abolish state athletic commissions regulating pro wrestling. If they're just going to take their 5 or 6% off the top and not actually regulate anything, including checking on the physical condition and health of various wrestlers, then what purpose do they have? He continues to have his own solution here, but athletic commissions too. It is weird. I mean, certain states don't have them, but here in New York, there is a lot of oversight. The same type of commission that would be involved in an athletic contest at a high school or collegiate wise, wrestling has to abide by that. With they have to have the medical staff on site. There needs to be a doctor, but there's also the bureaucratic nature of it, of who's getting paid for this too. And Meltzer recognizes that.
No, and I love that he calls them out here because it is silly. I mean, there's certain things, having a doctor on site, all that stuff does make absolute sense for this form of entertainment, but to sit there and put an athletic commission on pro wrestling. I mean, even to this day, where you still see people have to go get manager license. People got to go. You have to sign up for it. You have to pay your way into it now. It's the silliest thing in the world because it's entertainment. And that's the one takeaway from Vince saying this is sports entertainment. There shouldn't have been an athletic commission abiding towards pro wrestling after that point. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, UFC was banned in New York for one period of time. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that wrestling could have been banned in a certain state. And I'm sure there might be a state that you can't run wrestling. I'm sure that they say it's not illegal, but I'm sure they put a lot of walls in front of you that it would be financially impossible to do it. But he says, my own opinion is that a commission which would regulate consumer fraud. And by that, I mean blatant and frequent unexcused no-shows by wrestlers and other outright deceptions by the promotion. They have a purpose. I mean, we just talked about with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, like holding promotions accountable for doing what they said, living through the stipulations. That would never happen. But Meltzer always has hated false advertisements. He's been saying that over and over. He even today in 2023, as a surly, angry older man, he still is pissed about that. And 24 years old, I mean, a lot of clarity on that, because holding people accountable for what they say in a lot of ways is important, especially if people are buying tickets with their hard-earned money.
100%, man. We've seen it happen so much. I mean, not just in Smoky Mountain, but through a lot of wrestling in their entire fandom. False advertising, no shows, talent. You go to the show. You're not buying GCW tickets to not see Nick Gage, and if Nick Gage is advertised and you don't get to hear For Whom the Bell Tolls and be part of that riot when he comes out, you're going to leave disappointed, right? So it's very important to stick to your guns on advertising, talent, and your shit, man.
So our final piece of newsletter here is about Andre the Giant. And he said, while Andre was in Japan last month, Harley Race went to visit him several times at both his hotel and the airport in order to get him to jump. Andre turned it down, although Andre and Vince Jr. don't get along particularly well. And Andre has yet to sign a WWF contract for Vince, which is supposed to mean automatic termination, but in this case it didn't. He won't leave the fold out of loyalty to the family, particularly Vince Sr.'s widow. So two things I pulled away from that. Harley Race wanted him to leave, and imagine the world if Andre would have left and went to a different promotion. And also that he was working without a contract because you couldn't tell Andre you needed to, and there were rules in place to make sure like that talent needed to, and other people would be fired. But Andre, and deservedly so, was working under a different set of rules. So I would wonder, and maybe someone has the information about how long Andre worked without a contract, just kind of a handshake deal with Vince.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I mean, you're literally your biggest star working without a contract is huge, and him having the leeway to do whatever the hell he wants with that. I mean, there's way too many variables in that situation to be comfortable with. So I'd be pretty interested to hear the details on that too.
With that being said, it's time to get into our first episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, May 11th, 1985. Let's get our fix.
Get your fix.
Woo!
All right, here we are, the beautiful intro of Saturday Night's Main Event, May 11th, 1985, from Long Island, New York, Nassau Coliseum. Our current champs are world champions Hulk Hogan. He won it back on January 23rd, 1984. Our IC champions Greg Valentine. He won it back on September 24th, 1984. Our tag champs are Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. They won it back on March 31st, 1985. And our women's champ is Wendy Richter. She won it back on March 31st, 1985. So as we continue to talk about this, the influence of this event, this is a huge landmark in WWF's history, WWE's history. Besides getting Hulk Hogan and like cementing him as the guy from Verne Gagne and taking the chance on WrestleMania, putting this event on NBC is one of Mount Rushmore level idea that Vince had. Because you have to consider, as we talked about it extensively during the newsletter, want to emphasize that most of the United States and consumers didn't have cable or satellite TV. So the only way you could find a way is to expand WWF into national programming and put it on basic cable. And NBC was this entry point to people like, what is this? It may be the first time they're ever seeing pro wrestling in front of them. And it opens up a whole bunch of doors. And this was huge. It played a major role. And it advanced a lot of feuds. Saturday Night's Main Event had a lot of memorable moments, and for the lack of work rate, as Meltzer was saying before, this was one of the most, as far as 36 episodes go, very influential.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even when our age, when they not rebranded it, but they brought it back. I remember fondly watching those newer Saturday Night Main Events and enjoying the shit out of them and how much they meant for. It was just a fun night of pro wrestling, and I think that's what the overall vibe of it always has been. I mean, especially after watching these 2 episodes, there's a lot of camaraderie going on. And there's little wrestling, but it's a fun evening of pro wrestling, and that's what makes it so enjoyable, right?
So this episode is the fallout to WrestleMania 1, and things you need to know before going into this is Paul Orndorff took the fall, and he was blamed by Piper and Orton for losing the biggest match of their career in the main event of the first WrestleMania. Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov won the tag titles from US Express, who we know is Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda. And then Cyndi Lauper at her side, Wendy Richter, had won the women's championship against Lani Kai, who was managed by Fabulous Moolah. And here we are, setting the stage. And we didn't have weekly TV prior to this, but we're going to be moving on with the story and advancing storytelling and having the ability to really continue what becomes WWF over the course. And this is the machine for it.
Yeah. It's insane, absolutely insane, but awesome that they conceptualize something that we're accustomed to for regular wrestling program.
So we open up hearing from Wendy Richter, Cyndi Lauper, Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, really emphasizing the importance on this. And these were the largest stars at WrestleMania 1. So Wendy Richter, Cyndi Lauper, and having the approval of these mainstream stars, Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper, is a very big deal. So why wouldn't you open up with it? Because if someone happened to tune in, they left on their TV, they're sitting on the couch at 11:27, they didn't want to get up and change the channel, and you see Cyndi Lauper pop on, like, oh, I wonder what she's doing. Oh, there's Mr. T. What is this? And then that kind of, I thought it was important to set the stage with wrestlers and also celebrities.
100%, man. And I love that you said didn't want to get up and change the channel, because that is a lost quote
True.
These days, because you had to get up and change the channel back in the day.
So we have Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura rocking. I mean, just a beautiful outfit.
Before
I can't
the
wait
Bajas, he's ready to roll here, Mr. McMahon. Let's get into some Saturday Night Main Event.
I absolutely love it. And this here is the opening match, continuing that WrestleMania tag team feud. We get Ricky Steamboat in the US Express, which I said before is Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda, with Lou Albano in their corner, taking on Nikolai Volkov, the Iron Sheik, and George Steele, with Freddie Blassie in their corner. So
insane.
I love that the US Express is Born in the USA as their theme song. Every single one of the faces are wearing black trunks, which is confusing. It really is. So that is one thing. And we also saw it at the second Saturday Night's Main Event with the brawl with Orndorff and Piper. Yeah. Could you guys not both wear blue? Like, what are we doing? Can we link up for a second and be like, can we just all vary our colors up, because it becomes very confusing?
Yeah, there's not a lot of quality control on attires quite yet.
So as far as this match goes, I mean, it goes 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Ricky Steamboat and the US Express get the win here. Sheik and Volkov drop to the apron, and George Steele is drawn with the tag champs. Wyndham comes up behind, rolls them up. Crowd is shocked. After the match, Steele gets attacked from behind from the tag champs, and he fights both of them off, and Lou Albano gets in the ring to calm him down. So this was a highlight of George the Animal Steele. Your thoughts on George Steele? Because he never was a champion. He was a big thing during this time. Just as far as the green tongue, the biting, what are your thoughts on that?
It was goofy as shit, man. But he was a character. We'll get more into it when we get to the safari scene with Mean Gene. But I mean, that you watch him in the ring, and then you see those kind of segments, and he really was a being of his own world. And I think that's what was so compelling about it. I think that's what made you want to watch him, was because he was just all over the place and so wild and so crazy. And then when he'd rip the turnbuckle pad and taking the foam peanuts out and sticking them in his mouth, it's brilliant, man. But it's so goofy, and I love it.
He plays the role of Animal so well, and I think the lead to WrestleMania 3 with Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat and his role in that feud emphasizes it, when they do kind of the King Kong and lady with Miss Elizabeth, and he's gentle with her, but unsure if he's gonna be go to whatever side of him that he's like untamed. Like, I don't know. George Steele, I don't know. I has me intrigued. Watching him here, I'm like, damn, this dude had something, and I understand why he was emphasized a lot. And a guy that really didn't need a championship. He just didn't. He was a guy who just kind of existed, and people reacted to the things he was doing. Every time he touched in the ring with anybody, people were reacting, and that's what I pulled away from this match. But seeing a young Ricky Steamboat, Barry Windham, and Mike Rotunda teaming up, pretty damn cool.
Yeah, wild. Like that's the thing. I love going back and watching these things, and like with Smoky Mountain, it was getting to see some of our favorites, like New Jack and Chris Candido do their thing. But here we're watching literal icons of our time, of our fandom of pro wrestling, doing their thing at such a young age. It's insane.
So yeah, I mean, Ricky Steamboat, can't say enough good things about him. He'll continue to do. I think the highlight of him, like I was saying, WrestleMania 3, 1987 against Macho Man, probably one of the best matches still to this day. And this is his involvement. He's not with WWE for a long period of time. He's, a legend. It's a nice tie-in. We just saw him in AEW getting his ass kicked by Ricky Starks, a special ref. But this was cool to see, and I thought there was a lot of star power here. Lou Albano and Fred Blassie we didn't even talk about, but Freddie Blassie at ringside, that's a
crazy.
huge deal. This is like an absolute legend that is putting his stamp of approval on this opening contest. So if you're an initial wrestling fan watching for the first time, you got a fix of some really good personalities.
Yeah, and you have to be like, I mean, that's the bring in for the actual wrestling fan, right? You got your Freddie Blassies, you got your Lou Albanos, you got your George, you got your Ricky Steamboats. Like it's the content's there. I just think because it was the first episode of it, they were still trying to figure out how to go about it, but I thought for what this was for an opener, this was fun, man.
So before we get to the next match, Mean Gene does stop the Iron Sheik and Volkov on their way to the backstage area and ask them what's going on. And Blassie says that he didn't tag when he was supposed to because he's, he calls him a fruitcake. So different time, guys. 1985 does his thing here. And George Steele and Albano walk past them for another beatdown of the tag champs. And, I also looked at this as like, as far as the tag champs go, making them look like champions is important. And the fact that they're being beaten down extensively here, the US Express certainly look like the better team, getting the win and also kind of taking up Volkov and Sheik. They just look better. And like if you're watching this for the first time, you would have felt like the US Express were the champions, but it was the other way around.
Yeah, I think it was trying to emphasize how important the U.S. Express was and how big of a deal they were, as opposed to shooting down the tag team, the tag team champions at the time. So it was a good introductory point, right?
So our next segment here is, a staple of this era of wrestling, Piper's Pit, alongside his bodyguard Bob Orton Jr. And again, this is like, if you're looking for just extension of WrestleMania 1, they're literally extending all of this. And Roddy Piper's guest is Paul Orndorff, the other guy involved in WrestleMania 1's main event. So this is your classic opening segment. Like, if you want to put it in context of today, this would open a Monday Night Raw, SmackDown. Yeah. This is how you set the stage for the rest of, if not the rest of the show, if not the rest of the month of programming. And Piper is calling out Paul Orndorff because he's a loser and says, you're a piece of garbage for losing the match for us. You embarrassed everybody. It breaks down to a 2-on-1 situation, and Orndorff hits Piper and Orton to the mat. Paul Orndorff tries to hit the pile driver, which, again, context, 1985, the pile driver is a big goddamn deal. You're not just hitting the pile driver, just hit it.
Yeah.
That move is like the fans audibly gasped when he put him up for the pile driver.
Which is great. I loved it.
And we see Mr. T making the save, too. So this was a nice jam-packed thing to extend what was the main event of WrestleMania 1, where Paul Orndorff loses and they were embarrassed, and now you have Paul Orndorff as a face. Roddy Piper is one of the best heels to ever do it. And they're getting the payoff of the story instead of just letting it live in isolation.
Yeah, great storytelling going on in the best way possible.
So Mean Gene's with Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan cutting a promo, and Mean Gene asked him, what do you think about just what happened with Piper's Pit? And Hogan pretty much no-sells him. And just like he was talking about Mother's Day coming up. He's talking about his pythons. Hogan looked like $1 million here, 10 beyond belief. This is peak Hogan, man. And that title, too. We got a good look at that WWF Championship. That is not the one we're used to, but really good look. A little silver for my liking, but the championship was a good-looking belt.
It was beautiful, man. But I couldn't get over Hogan talking about Mother's Day. It was just, let me tell you something, Mother's Day maniacs out there. It was good. It was a good hype up segment, and I mean, like you said, Hogan, peak Hogan here. I mean, jacked up, tanner than tan, looked like $1 million. Mean Gene, obviously the voice of the voice, just doing his thing, so beautifully done.
Well, so some mother in 1985 got a Mother's Day card because Hogan reminded their child.
Damn right.
They ran to the convenience store to get a card, and they filled it out, got some flowers because Hogan reminded you, and that's that's taking your vitamins, saying your prayers, and also being gracious to your mother for all that she does. Happy Mother's Day, Mrs. Belea. All right, we get to our next match here, and it's the aforementioned Hulk Hogan taking on Bob Orton, and we got all these different guys in the corner. Mr. T's in the corner, Roddy Piper's in their corner. This is for the WWF Championship. Bob Orton getting a shot at the championship. This is, by all intents and purposes, our main event. And the way these events, Saturday Night's main events, are structured, it's out of our comfort zone for sure. It's like an upside down cake. Everything settled to the bottom here, but you want to make sure that you're getting the most eyes on the product. And I think the opening segment or close to the opening segment is always where the best match you want people to tune in to see. And I remember the Hogan Andre match that we're going to talk about, whatever episode it winds up being. It's important to have the most eyes on it as a transition, especially with national TV. It's strategic. So there's got to be some metric that they measured, like, okay, this is our biggest attraction. How do we maximize the viewers? And here it was.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it.
So Eye of the Tiger hits, and out comes Hulk Hogan. They blast out. I'm pretty sure they put Real American on the network, but
yeah,
we know it's Eye of the Tiger. Tom Montalto would make sure we know that it's Eye of the Tiger. It has to.
I promise you, I was there. I was in the front row.
I mean, this is a typical Hogan's 80s match with the heel being chased around and then beat down by Hogan, and Orton is regrouping, trying to make sure that he's getting an advantage, and we get the heel taking control and Bob Orton cheating to do so. And as far as this match goes, I mean, what did you expect? I mean, I'm not looking at work rate for it, but as far as nostalgia, I could see why this draws people in. The personalities at ringside and in the ring, just absolute legends. And this is for the championship. We get a DQ finish, unfortunately. Hogan hits the leg drop right before he can cover, and Piper nails him to the floor as he goes for the pin. Referee calls for the bell immediately. And then we get kind of a melee at the end of the match after 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Orton and Piper beating that Mr. T. And, Hogan tries to run Orndorff off. And, Orndorff makes the save for them. Some chaos at the end, but this is, some face turns here with getting Paul Orndorff as the face earlier in the night. What did you think of this?
I thought it was interesting. Still, every wrestling show, I know it's not a complete end of the episode itself, but you get that the big matches, they end chaotically. It draws you in, and like it's the birthplace of everything we see on Nitro, everything we see in Raw. It's you get your biggest people in the ring, and you make absolute chaos at the end of it. And I love it. I think it's good, and I still trying to, like, Mr. T is. People don't understand how big of a deal Mr. T was in 1985, man. I mean, this guy was the biggest action television star out there. I mean, A-Team was massive. So you say the star power here, that Mr. T is the star power of the 80s, man.
No, absolutely. And we're going to read the newsletter coming up in a few episodes where I was going through, and the relationship with Mr. T and Vince McMahon is not great. And bringing him back for WrestleMania 2 is not guaranteed. It wasn't, because he wasn't happy with his payday, and you don't hear about that stuff, but
yeah,
they paid him the bag to get back for that boxing match against Piper at the aforementioned Nassau Coliseum. But this is all being built here. And my question to you is about Paul Orndorff. To me, this dude is a heel. He's a heel. Oh, yeah. But him as a face here with Hogan, do you think it hits? Or, I mean, he's jacked, he's tan. You could see why fans would cheer him, and they believe in kayfabe here too. They're going to cheer who's beating up the heels. But to me, Paul Orndorff is always best when he's a heel.
No, 100%. I mean, aesthetically looking at him, he is your pro wrestler. Like, that is the poster they have up at the gym is like, you want to be in WWF, this is what you're gonna look like. But his heel work is obviously mountains beyond his face work, and it doesn't really hinder the show at all. Just watching it, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But I do love me some Orndorff heel work, man.
Love the tights too. I mean, the classic
Yeah.
Mr. Wonderful with the #1, the blue. Like, yeah, he's great, and I think he's a better heel. He's one of those guys that plays better as a heel. But it worked here. I thought making the save for Hogan is going to get you a good reaction. And DQ finishes suck, but and it's one of those overdone things. But maybe in '85 they want to keep the title on Hogan, obviously, but they want to keep the heels looking strong going into the next set of programming they have. And pinning Bob Orton here would have been detrimental to the build. Like, he had him beat. The leg job has the visual pin. If it wasn't for Piper, you could make the argument he would have had him pinned, but you want to leave that doubt for them. So I understand why they did the DQ finish, because if you start beating the heels, your baby faces have nothing to do, and there's still a lot to be accomplished with Orton and Piper and all the dastardly things they're going to do on our screens.
Yeah, and you want to elevate that drama on your first debut here. Like, you want people to be like, oh, what the hell is going to happen next now? So I think they accomplished it with the DQ.
So we go to Mean Gene in the back with Cyndi Lauper and Captain Lou Albano. They're talking about the women's championship match, but they really want to also emphasize this Rock and Wrestling Connection music video. But it seems like the song Belcaster is called "The Goonies Are Good Enough." So the story in the video is that Cyndi Lauper and her father, Lou Albano, are running a gas station, which is not making enough money. So they need some rich customers to come and help them. And here comes the WWF limousine. We got appearances from Piper, Freddie Blassie, Iron Sheik, and everyone's arguing in the video. And meanwhile, we got Fabulous Moolah driving by in an old truck with Volkov. In the bed, he's milking a cow. Yes, I'm kidding you. I mean, a cow in the bed of the truck, like, no joke. So the music starts, and there it is. So after they show the video, Piper comes around Lauper, and they kind of get the rub there with Cyndi being the star here. And they're all emphasizing this is the greatest music video ever. So music is a big part of wrestling. And we talked about this with ECW, with the themes, and we even saw it with a couple weeks ago with RVD being brought back. It wouldn't have been the same without Walk.
Absolutely.
But the relationship here with Rock and Wrestling Connection, and even though the music sucks, even though it's not good, and like maybe at the time it was good or something like that.
Yeah.
But just having them in the same room in production, it creates this vision that wrestling is bigger than it actually is. And I think that's kind of the shine they put on things, where anytime you're associated with Cyndi Lauper or Mr. T, and you're in a music video, there's a chance this might play on MTV and people will say, who is that guy? What is going on here? Is he wearing tights? Like, what's going on with this wrestling thing? And then tune in. Yeah,
no, it's so beautifully said in the newsletter, the big lie. It's interesting to see it all conceptualized. And I do agree with Albano. This is the greatest music video of all time. It's
Go
fucking
out
wild,
check
man.
this out. The Goonies are good enough. So, Cyndi Lauper doing her thing. But we go to after the break, Gene is standing by with Fabulous Moolah. And she said that, I have a contract in place that makes sure that Cyndi Lauper cannot be at ringside, because all she does is interfere in the matches. There's a championship match and she cannot be there. I want my title back. I'm going to take it from Wendy Richter, and Cyndi Lauper unable to be at ringside. And we also get Lauper saying that she can't be barred from ringside because she has her manager's license. And you said that before. You want to make sure you have the license. And they also show that her boyfriend is Mitch Hedberg. Do you know this guy? He's a comedian.
Hey man, how's it going? Is it really Mitch Hedberg? It would have been awesome if it was.
Yeah, exactly. He looked like him, right? That was
he definitely had. I was getting that, or some like wannabe ZZ Top vibes. He's got the beard, he's got the long luxury. It's probably Hawk, like back in '85.
Oh, man.
He swooned Cyndi Lauper with a nice bean sprout quesadilla and made his way on the big time.
Bending the knee, just getting a rub and tug at some local. I don't know. Did you listen to the flagship with that, by the way, or no?
Oh yeah.
What a story. Make sure you guys go check out the flagship at this point 3 weeks ago, where he talks about his Indiana massage parlor. So you can use your imagination. NBC would not approve of his story.
He was at that actual gas station they shot the music video.
Yeah, instead of milking the cow, Nikolai Volkov is jerking him off, I guess, right?
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
All right, we go to our women's championship match. Wendy Richter takes on the Fabulous Moolah, and this one's quick. Howard Finkel, though, but
pulls out that scroll, like, ladies and gentlemen.
He reads the official contract that's just, it's akin to Jericho's list, which Lauper is banned from ringside, even though she says she can't be. She is, and apparently that was the fans did boo it. But Wendy Richter as women's champion, they tried, they did, but it's just not. It didn't have any oomph to it. 3 minutes, the crowd didn't really care. Richter countered a slam into a small package for the 3 count. And we get Lauper and her boyfriend coming to ring to celebrate. And apparently Spider Lady is on her way too, according to all reports. So we're going to get the feud between Spider Lady and Wendy Richter. But women's wrestling's come a long way, guys.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have Mean Gene with Junkyard Dog and his mama. So is this actually Junkyard Dog's mama? And what's the focus of this? Is just to have
it's Mother's Day. Hogan was talking about Mother's Day. Then we got Junkyard Dog with Mama Yard Dog.
So all right, so we get Junkyard Dog in a match here, getting a win over Pete Doherty, and I had to look up Pete Doherty right here because he is a WWF jobber from the early 80s, and that's really all he accomplished according to his cage match. So he was here as an enhancement, but this match goes long, man, like 3 minutes for an enhancement. Like, you want a Junkyard Dog to get his stuff in, and he's a guy who was Intercontinental title, contender, to being kind of a guy who's just here. And I understand enhancement matches, they have a place on the card, but if they're going to be on the card, they can't be 3 minutes, because the women's match was shorter, and this was a title match. So what are we doing? No,
and it's also weird that you have all these other matches on like this could have been in the earlier on the card and been like, this should not have been the go home match of the night. So very interesting. Junkyard Dog, though, still $1 million. I could watch him come out there and roll around with a broom. Like, I'd be happy to, but it basically would have been better than that.
So to end the show here, we have a Mother's Day party with all the wrestlers' moms who are just hanging out in the back, and JYD and Hogan are standing to Blassie and Co. without wanting to beat them up. So I guess they're able to put their differences aside for Mother's Day. Cyndi Lauper and her mom are at the party, and Wendy Richter's mom is not there. So that's also something you can notice here. And Moolah comes by, says she wasn't invited, and we get her thrown into the cake, and also Gene Okerlund gets some cake on him as well. 2 weeks in a row, we're going to see that again. There's another cake scene. This is like something that's funny in the 80s. Like, someone out there, if you're out there, Paul Ellering, how old are you, dude? I mean, food is funny, like getting cake on someone, but 2 weeks in a row, like, this is the first week you do it, and then you rerun it at the wedding. Is it gonna, maybe they're like, I got this great idea every single week, we'll find a way to get cake on somebody.
Sounds like some Vince shit. It's like, oh, me and Gene, you're gonna get some cake in the face.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you look at this episode, a big story of this was Cyndi Lauper. She was thrown throughout the whole card, and I think she probably drew in a lot of non-wrestling fans to just watch her. And if you compare it to today, like, say Taylor Swift showed up to Raw, I'm sure a lot of Swifties would show up and watch her, because that's part of the fandom. Like, you're going to go tune in if the person co-signs it, if they start drinking a certain energy drink, like, guess what? It's your favorite now. And like, that's always worked. It still works today, but even more so here, where you didn't have as much influence from the outside of Instagram, other celebrities. It was just kind of, that's why these advertisements, when Macho Man's eating the Slim Jim in the mid 90s, you're like, I'm eating the Slim Jim because Macho Man did.
Yeah. So, absolutely. No, but listen, I mean, this is the beginning of the Logan Pauls, Bad Bunnies, the celebrity crossover in wrestling. And I mean, Cyndi Lauper is not a pro wrestler, but she's still laying the concrete for the groundwork for what becomes, I mean, a very, very big occurring thing in pro wrestling is celebrity appearances.
So we had, I mean, the big thing I also pulled away this is the Animal's face turn earlier in the night. And apparently he would never turn heel again, so that he would be sort of this baby face, as we saw, like I mentioned, most famously in the WrestleMania 3 build. And yeah, so that was some important things here.
Yeah.
Paul Orndorff turning face. I'm sure people forget that he was face because he turns on Hogan pretty quickly after this, but it's a good, I mean, to me, it's a good opener for the show. I don't think it's as bad as it's made out to be. Honestly, I really like the dramatic nature of how Meltzer said it was so bad. Like I said, if you are expecting something different, you're tuning into the wrong show.
Yeah, no, and that is 100% how it is. It's so, I mean, it's so, it is what it is. You knew what it was going to be going into it. I don't know what Meltzer was technically expecting out of this. Like, was he expecting WrestleMania 1 all over again, but like at a higher capacity? Like, it doesn't make sense to be completely shitting all over it because it's a new concept, new idea, new show. This is episode number 1, man. I mean, you don't know what you're expecting yet. So you shouldn't get your hopes up on shit. And if you're getting your hopes up, then I mean, you're probably in the fault there.
So we go to our second taping of Saturday Night's Main Event, number 2, October 5th, 1985, East Rutherford, New Jersey, from the Meadowlands Arena. This was taped 2 days prior on 10/3/1985. Our champions have changed since then, and Hogan is still our world champion. Our IC champion, however, is Tito Santana now. He won it back in July 5th, 1985 to be exact. He took it from Greg Valentine on the build. And then also we have new tag champs too. You would think they put it on the US Express, but no, they went with put it on Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, who won it in late August. So 8/24/1985, and our women's champ is still the same. This reminds me of like when they had the women's champ in WWE WWF 1998, where they just didn't defend it. They just like,
yeah. It's like,
WCW did too. They were like, oh, we have a women's championship.
Yeah. It comes up in meetings like once every 6 months. They're like, oh shit, yeah.
Longest reigning champ ever.
Yeah.
So we lead in again with Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura, and we get Nikolai Volkov immediately starting here, and he wants to be WWF champion. This is kind of the theme here. We're going to be opening up with big matches, our biggest match on the card, and it's going to be Hogan and Nikolai Volkov. But the other stuff they're showing in the beginning of this is Uncle Elmer is on a mission, as he's called, of love, and Roddy Piper is standing for women everywhere and says no woman should ever want to marry that guy. So he's going to be involved in all of this. We get the Saturday Night's Main Event intro, which is awesome, and we waste no time, dude. We head right into this first match, which is aesthetically our main event. Flag match for the WWF Championship. Nikolai Volkov with Fred Blassie in his corner, taking on the champ Hulk Hogan. Your thoughts on this? It is a quick one. Nikolai Volkov couldn't work, but flag match. I get 85 Hulkamania is all about America and stuff, but they're really putting down the Russian flag. Like, this is all about it. I mean, the flag getting involved constantly.
No, 100%. Hogan, I mean, even Hogan, I ain't letting you talk bad with all this Russian language, dude, to my Hulkamaniacs out there. Like, it's funny to see in retrospect, but it was okay. It did the job. A flag match is a flag match, no matter how you look at it. You could slap, anybody into a flag match. It's going to turn out to be probably just as bad or good as this one is. It wasn't terrible, but it was okay. It got the job done. That's all I gotta say about it.
So they set this match up because Volkov just wants to sing the national anthem to everybody, and he won't stop doing it. So Hogan comes out because he is, Mr. America, literally and figuratively becomes Mr. America, and he challenges Volkov to a match, and he says the winner gets to display their flag at ringside if they so please. And we get Hogan's intro is the song Star Stripes and Forever. I'm just going to figure out exactly who sings that song, but it's a one night only that he used this theme. And I thought that was interesting. This was an IMDb. Stars and Stripes Forever. The song is by John Philip Sousa. So yeah, so this song coming out is the reason why I used it. And I guess they wanted to make sure that it's like extra American. This is before America came out. So Stars and Stripes Forever is a song written in 1896. So it is a song that is very American, as American as you can get. I mean,
unless the show is on the 4th of July, don't get more American than that.
Match goes 5 minutes and 17 seconds, and we get smoke and mirrors, obviously, because like I said, Volkov can't work. He's well past his prime. Hogan himself is never going to be especially there in this era, he's not able, and not that he's asked to work a certain era, style of work right here. Hits the leg drop for the 3 count, even though Blassie getting involved and all that stuff. After the match, Hogan takes the Soviet flag from Blassie. He spits on it and then uses it to clean his boots. So yeah, I mean, it goes quick. Like that's one thing. One compliment is that they're not trying to be something that they're not here. 5 minutes is like goes by really fast. All the Fred Blassie is so good at ringside, and the crowd's involvement is great. Like, and low hanging fruit, as Meltzer said in the SI article that we talked about during the happy hour. They use this, like they use the anti-American type of theme throughout the rest of the show that it's going to get people to react. It always will. Of course.
Yeah. And again, it was a segment of the times. It absolutely is what it was. You couldn't do that nowadays to get away with it and make it entertaining.
So we get Mean Gene backstage with Hulk Hogan, and Hogan is just hyping up USA. He said it's going to live forever, brother. And they are talking about the Uncle Elmer wedding, which we'll see Hogan in attendance in his great cutoff dress shirt. And we also learned that Mean Gene's going to play the organ later that night. So we then get a look at the bride early, and then Gene is with the Hillbillies to kill some time, and they're not worried about anything going on. They're excited for the wedding coming up, and you know, this is going to be the theme of the show. And I understand it's a variety show. You want to have different things for different people. As far as wrestling weddings go, this is not the best one. I think Macho Elizabeth takes the cake as far as the best ever one. But there's been some good ones. Kane and Lita, Billy and Chuck. I wonder where this ranks for people as far as Mount Rushmores go. But the characters, they don't hit. Who cares about Uncle Elmer and the Hillbillies?
No, absolutely. That's how I felt getting into it. That's how I felt for a majority of their segments on this show. But they were entertaining nonetheless. But it's very dated, very cliche Southerner. Like that is what Vince thought Southerner wrestling probably was the Uncle Elmer, Hillbilly Jim, Cousin Junior trio.
So on the day of his wedding, he's in action here. Uncle Elmer is wrestling Johnny Valiant, and Uncle Elmer has Hillbilly Jim and Cousin Junior in his corner. Match is 12 seconds long. So
yes,
this breaks the King Kong Bundy's record at the time for shortest match ever from WrestleMania against ST Jones in 8 seconds. They said it was 6 seconds. Overall, the whole segment, entrances and everything, maybe it was like from the start of the bell. I timed it on my phone as 12 seconds. They said 6. This is WWF rewriting their whole narrative. The big lie as it continues.
Minutes are 120 seconds in WWF in 1985. Just so you know.
Exactly. Uncle Elmer is 460 pounds according to the announce team, which there's no way this dude is not 460 pounds. No. The whole thing is just a lie.
Yeah.
But I'm happy. I'm happy that it ended quick because no one wants to see this match.
No, but it was like you said, this was your step over segment. It was for what it was. It was what it was.
So Mean Gene is with the Hillbillies once more, and Elmer can barely talk, and Mean Gene is trying to save the interview by getting more perspective of the match, of the wedding, because this is a huge part of the story. And Uncle Elmer, despite only wrestling for 6 seconds or 12, anywhere in between, he's blown up, dude. He's unable to even talk.
He's trying to. Well, he's trying to save the rest of his energy for the wedding. You know, he's got a lot going on this.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the food's good at the wedding. We'll see. Arnold Schwarzenegger's in the crowd. They show him, and a young looking Arnold. I love this Arnold because this looks like the Jingle All the Way Arnold, which is my favorite version of him. Underrated holiday movie. I believe that it doesn't get the love it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, this is years before, way before.
But it looks like it's the same haircut. He's even wearing like a sweater that looks like the character.
He's Happy Arnold. I love the world of Vince McMahon and pro wrestling.
So we get not a long-lived talk show similar to Piper's Pit with Jesse Ventura called The Body Shop, and he has Bobby Heenan on the show as the first guest. And since Paul Orndorff turned into a face, now Bobby Heenan is no longer his manager, and Heenan is really making sure that he lets everybody know how much he hates him. He puts out a $50,000 bounty on Orndorff's head, and he says that, listen, I have cash with me tonight, so someone can take him out. So this was quick as hell, dude. For a segment that's supposed to be a talk show, and for Jesse Ventura to lead us out, I was like, well, that's been The Body Shop, and that was it. And I'm like, that's like it was not even 8 minutes.
It was an interview segment, and it wasn't even like a sit down. It was just like, here, let's go see what he's got to say about the match and get through with it. My pull away from this is I love watching Jesse the Body Ventura talk. Like, he's just so good. He's got the
I thought you were going to say you love bounties in wrestling, because I was thinking that too. Like,
I do love bounties in wrestling. I mean,
I love those things because it speaks for itself. You have a suitcase full of money. Dude, it puts meaning on so much. Like, I want bounties in AEW.
No, I'm so down. We need a bounty hunter in AEW. That'd be great.
We had Frankie Kazarian. He was hunting people, but never panned out.
He went to go hunting Impact. But I love Heenan here. Like, I don't need the cash to check. I have the cash on me. Like, what fucking superhero villain are you that's just carrying around a wad of $50,000? Yeah, go take him out right now. Fuck Orndorff.
So speaking of Orndorff, we get an interview with Mean Gene. Mean Gene's all over the show, and Orndorff makes some jokes about Roddy Piper wearing a kilt and all that kind of stuff. And Gene asks Piper what will happen to Heenan if he doesn't pay up, and he says, plain and simple, I'll rip his throat out. So Piper's like, dude, all right, I'm going to cash in. I'll take Orndorff out. And I don't know exactly. He didn't clarify what it means to take him out. Like, we don't know exactly what that means, but he's going to beat him in the ring. So if he injures him bad enough, he's going to get the cash. So Piper is now trying his best. And that kind of incites the feud already. They already hate each other based off that WrestleMania finish, but this add money to the mix. Man, there's a lot of incentive in this match.
Yeah, no, a great look for Piper too. I like Piper with a purpose, not doing silly shit. Like, give him something to do. I gotta break his freaking throat out. Like, go do it. Give me angry Piper all day.
And this match was this. I mean, they were trying to replicate it as a shoot, man. It was just a brawl, not a wrestling move. I think the only move I can pinpoint was the suplex. There was even one that replicated a DDT, but it wasn't. And there was no pin attempts. Towards the end of the match, you got Orndorff getting his knees up. Literally, they were just like grappling on the floor, and they rolled out of the ring. And they get, Orndorff comes off the ropes and tries for a crossbody, roll out of the ring. They brawl all the way to the locker room, and the double count out, 4 minutes and 4 seconds. Piper gets away from Paul Orndorff once he reaches the room, and the fight continues as the door gets shut. And this was fun, man. This was short as hell. Two very memorable characters. And this was chaotic, and I think that's what I'm really realizing about a lot of the wrestling is when the more chaotic, the better.
Yeah, no, I mean that's our whole swan story for Shot of Nostalgia. Is the more chaotic the shit is, not only the better the wrestling, but the better the ratings, the better we all feel about it. This was probably the best thing on, and not jumping ahead of the gun, but this is probably my favorite thing on the two shows. This was fun. I like the idea of a stiff brawl. And that it translates very well. I don't know. I really felt it. This was Piper in his prime. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I love them going backstage and fighting too, and getting the camera back there and following them out. Good shit. Very good shit.
So we have the Uncle Elmer Joyce wedding on deck, and Hulk and Andre are at the wedding alongside the Hillbillies to really emphasize that everyone's there for Elmer and Joyce on their big day. And the fans hate this. They're booing this, and the crowd is like, we came to see wrestling. This sucks. It looked like someone was throwing stuff in the ring, and not good. Vince and Jesse are trying their best to make it seem like it's good. But again, I think it speaks to, and wrestling weddings can work. I just think no one cared about these characters. Like, who is Joyce? Who is Elmer? Like, seeing Elmer as this, like, he's less than a secondary character. If this was another wrestler that someone cared about, someone else on the roster, if this was George the Animal Steel, I think people would care a lot more. It's just that these characters don't resonate. The main thing that comes out of this is Roddy Piper, and Roddy Piper shares his thoughts and talks about how there's no room for romance in wrestling, and he leaves after that. So this is an awkward segment. Elmer kisses the bride, and usually the wedding is setting up a feud, but this is really this Piper and setting Piper up against the Hillbillies up until WrestleMania 2, until he's ready to take on Mr. T. So a little subplot, but I don't know. This kind of sucked. I'll be honest with you.
No, this definitely didn't kind of suck. This was absolutely terrible. It is just one of those things that falls wayside. Like, everybody remembers the highlights, right? But this is the shit that's in this. Like, this is that piece of onion that you didn't want in your burger, and you're like, oh fuck, there's an onion in my burger. Like, it really just puts a shit taste in your mouth, and it was just like, I don't know. I didn't vibe with it at all.
Yeah, and again, I think it really had to do with the goofier it was. It's fine, but I think it had to do with the characters because
Yeah.
maybe in 1985 someone cared a lot about Uncle Elmer and Joyce, but it was like two random people on our screen getting married, and the crowd there hated it, and people at home probably watching it might have drawn in some casuals, but I understand the attempt, but I think they need to do what people that mean, or at least put a little more emphasis on the characters leading up to it because these guys just felt so random to me.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're just tuning in randomly in the middle of the night and this is what's on, I mean, how would you want to keep like you'd be like these hillbillies are getting wrestling, Hulk Hogan's there, like shut that shit off. I'm going to bed. Like it's just weird.
A lot of emphasis on Hillbilly Jim and his crew. Like, and I understand Hillbilly Jim is a specimen. He's a big dude, got a nice LJN figure. Like,
hell yeah,
Hillbilly Jim is a legend, but the whole extension of the family and stuff, I don't know. Vince seems like he probably put a lot more weight into the backstory of Hillbilly Jim and their family than really anyone really cared about. But
they ain't no Dudleys. That's for sure.
They are not. No, I would definitely be into a Big Dick Dudley wedding for sure.
Hell yeah.
If he brought Big Dick Dudley in for or dances with Dudley to get married, why not? I'd be into it.
Yeah, sign guy there doing the we now pronounce you. I think it would work really good. Yeah, we just booked it.
Well, they'll be at Impact 1000, so we'll see if they want to do something like that.
Yeah.
But all right, so we have Mean Gene with Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, and Bobby Heenan, and they're just hyping up their next match here about taking on Andre the Giant and Tony Atlas. And here's Andre in action wearing some nice red tights too. So Andre wearing a variation. Hogan, we've been seeing not just wear the yellow either. He's wearing white, and we've seen him wear blue in the past as well. So having different looks, little variations is kind of cool. But this match is not great and deservedly so. A lot of big meaty guys slapping meat in this match, like Andre, Big John Studd, King Kong, and Tony Atlas is no small guy himself. But your thoughts on this match? I mean, it is a DQ, but give your thoughts and your breakdown on it.
I don't know. It wasn't a great match by any means, but I think the spectacle of all these big dudes in there was what really sold it. And that's what I was. I looked at the screen. I was like, holy shit! Like, think about just the weight in the ring right now. You got Andre, you got Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy. I mean, Tony Atlas, you said it. He's not a small guy either, man. It's insane that all four of them are just doing their thing in the ring on a Saturday night's main event. Like that's my takeaway from it. I was more blown away by the spectacle of what was going on as opposed to whatever they had planned for the in-ring work. Because this was just like, wow. Like it took a lot to kind of wrap my head around it.
So we had Atlas incapacitated. The heels are double teaming Andre in the corner. The ref calls for the bell because he couldn't get control of the match. And we get Hogan coming to make the save after Andre hits the double noggin knocker. Hogan's wearing leather pants. And this is going to set up the main event for our next Saturday night's main event, which will be awesome to see. And we'll, of course, cover that in our Closing the Tab segment. But this was cool. And you can kind of make the argument this is setting the stage for WrestleMania 3, which is a whole 2 years away from here. But this is something they had to be looking at. Like, they want to cash in on Andre Hogan. As they build Hogan up, Andre is Andre. He already is the biggest star, as you reference, at this point in the company. Yeah. And they're trying to make Hogan get to his level. I think that's what people forget. Everyone just kind of thinks Hogan was there already, but it took time to build him. You mentioned getting him from Vern Gagne and building the machine behind him. Hogan was still in the infancy of Hulkamania, and then he was still emerging. So Andre is a big piece of that.
No, absolutely. He is a vital piece to it.
So we have George the Animal Steel, this segment here. I'll let you take the lead on this. You very thoroughly enjoyed this segment of the Detroit Zoo. Mean Gene Okerlund and George the Animal Steel hanging out. He's turned face, and now he's hanging out in the zoo. Yeah, no,
Mean Gene just kind of pulling up in that beautiful tiger striped truck ever so beautifully. But yeah, man, he's just trying to get behind. This was more of like a comedy sketch. This felt like something from Saturday Night Live. It kind of had Fuji Vice vibes for me, like just George the Animal Steel kind of walking around the zoo, like hanging out with the animals. I mean, he does that beautiful the elephant noise. It was perfect, man. And like, I don't know, this was a really fun, silly, stupid segment. Like, kind of the comparisons of George being an animal with the animals. Mean Gene's full decked out safari gear. Like, it's goofy,
so on the
funny.
nose that it's like, good. You know what I mean? Like, so like he is an animal. Like, It's not
Yeah.
a moniker.
And it's so, like even to I love the final part of the segment where he runs into the grass and then turns around and makes the elephant noise just by opening his mouth and they cut away. Like, it's goofy as fuck, but it works. And this is the type of goofy that works with pro wrestling. Like, you got such a over the top person as George the Animal Steel, and you throw him in the element of like literalness. Like, he's an animal, put him in a zoo, have Mean Gene go do the like. It just fucking works, and it works so well. I loved it so much. Mean Gene's awesome. Georgie Animal Steel, huge props, man. Loved it.
I do very much enjoy this because, like you said, I think it's so on the nose and it's so exactly literal to the name animal that it just shows they don't take themselves too seriously, and it's larger than life. It's a cartoon character come to life, and there's something appealing about it. If you're trying to appeal to a younger audience, which they eventually do, they capture the imagination of guys that are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and then you create lifelong fans. That wrestling eventually grew with those people, expanding into the would this work today? No, it would not work today. But there is a piece of wrestling that they were trying, and this is probably what pissed off like Fritz or whoever the other AWA or any Vern Gagne. Like, they're probably watching like, what the like, this is what gets put on national TV. We can't get a deal, but this is what's there.
Yeah,
it just shows that, you know, this is their olive branch to NBC and to the national audience of like, it's not all, you know, beating each other up. It can be funny and goofy, and your kids can watch it. And this was a segment that was akin to that.
No, I was out loud laughing while watching. Like, I literally belly laughed. Like, it was funny. It was like, not intentionally funny. It was goofy funny, but it hit the nail on the head. It was just perfect, man.
So our main event here, the Dream Team, our current tag champs, Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, with Johnny Valiant in their corner, taking on Lenny Poffo and Tony Garea for the WWF Tag Team Championship. This is quick, but they show the clip of the Dream Team winning the belts from the US Express after Beefcake raked Wyndham's eyes with something. So in between the two we've got some months here. This is from May to October. So some things went down. So we got the US Express getting the titles back and then losing them to the Dream Team, Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. Before we get into the match, quickly, your thought on the teaming of Beefcake and Valentine. I'm so used to seeing them as singles competitors on their own. Brutus Beefcake is wearing his attire. He looks like the barber. Like, this was an interesting pairing.
It was weird. I mean, it worked. It's one of those things that you could just throw two guys together. And I really think at 85, you didn't need a lengthy ass story involving why these two are a tag team. It's just like, pull their names out of a hat, throw them together, and it works for what it is. And it worked here. Like, it was good. Man, a Brutus Beefcake. Longevity, man. That guy wrestled for a long time. Like, it's
dude, we
crazy.
were covering him in 96, man.
Yeah, it's like 10 years removed, man. 11 years out of there, and he still looked like $1 million. It's insane.
Even
Absolutely
the jet ski
insane.
accident couldn't stop him. He was like, he was staying in the path.
Yeah, the disciple fucking ran strong. But listen, I thought it was a very quick but fun match, and it was nothing great. I love seeing Lanny Poffo. That was fucking awesome, man. And like, just it's the I think the talent being here for me, and seeing some of these names, like obviously the Andre and King Kong Bundy match, like, it's just like you fall in love with the spectacle of it all, and like this was part of it too. It was cool to see Greg Valentine and Beefcake kind of hanging together, and seeing Lanny out there doing his thing, and it was short and fun. I enjoyed it.
There is a Saturday night's main event that is Lanny Poffo versus Hogan for the title, and Extra Cooler Boys covered it at length, and it had me looking at Lanny Poffo through a different lens. I've always was a fan of the work, but if you go and watch the character work and just the investment he has in what is his character as the genius, and you can kind of see it here. He's not quite the genius. He is Lanny Poffo. You can see the emergence of that type of charisma. It's just, it oozes off of him. And I think he is just an understated part of wrestling history that people don't talk about enough. And I mean, his brother's Macho Man, so it's probably in the blood, dude. But Lanny Poffo is epic here. I thought he shined so bright in this match. And like you said, it was quick, but it was fun. And I think in a time where work rate is completely secondary, if not, third rate, he is a guy who can go out there and put on a great, great match. And he continues that. And again, I can't wait to cover the Hogan match against Lanny Poffo, because that might be one of the best matches that Hogan has ever had work rate wise in WWF. And I think people are like, no,
absolutely.
really? Is that true? but it is true. Go watch the Extra Cooler Boys and check them out. They covered it extensively, and they did such a great job talking about it. But Lenny Poffo is awesome. And like you said, the names here and seeing where they were and how it was shaking up and how much will change just in 5 years about what everyone's doing and how established everybody is on the card. And this is still on the entry level. This is like going back and watching AEW, that first Double or Nothing. Like, oh, this whole roster's weird. Having MJF coming out in the Battle Royal, cutting a promo. You didn't know what he would become.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to go back and watch it now and be like, oh, wow, all these years removed, 4 years and change, seeing what everybody is on the card. It's fascinating. And I have that kind of feeling with this as well, because these are not no names. These are guys who go on to do big things during the golden era, and they're all here. No,
it's like I said, it's a spectacle, man. It's a very awesome though. I enjoy the shit out of it. It's been fun.
So Valentine connects with the hammer elbow. He hits the figure 4, and he makes Garea tap out. Lenny Poffo is just standing there on the apron, and it looks like he's just like, whatever. Like we're not a team, and I'm frustrated with you. And the U.S. Express, as we know, never got the rematch against the champs, and by WrestleMania, they're no longer here. They're back in UWF. So would have been cool, and they were getting huge reactions. We mentioned that match last week, from the last show, that they were getting huge reactions from the crowd. So it's kind of a shame that both Wyndham and Rotunda decide to go elsewhere. But we'll see Rotunda again for sure, and we'll see Wyndham for sure.
Absolutely.
And we get our invite, didn't get lost in the mail. We're going to the wedding too. The reception, hors d'oeuvres, we get food. We get Hogan with a cut off dress shirt, Paul Orndorff. We got Vince. We got Jesse Ventura. Everybody at the table. And all I kept thinking is watching is, imagine those personalities sitting at a table today.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Hogan, Orndorff, Vince, and Jesse. Can you imagine? I mean, Orndorff is no longer with us, right? Orndorff passed away.
Yeah.
But
Jesse's not mentally with us either.
The larger than life personality sitting at a table discussing, like, I know this is a goofy setting, but just seeing them having dinner somewhere, imagine the conversations that these dudes could have.
Yeah, no, and it just goes, like I said, it's a spectacle, man. Just thinking about all this shit, I wish I was in the writing room for this. Like, oh, we're gonna do the wedding. Like, this is fucking bonker.
So Lenny Poffo cuts a promo, and it's a poem for the happy couple. This is kind of the start of the Geniuses poem stuff, and this is really just exactly what we come to love about Lenny Poffo. Hillbilly Jim does the toast, and out comes Tiny Tim, and he presents Elmer and Joyce with the ukulele. And Tiny Tim is from a time, 10 years prior to this, maybe even longer.
Yeah.
But, one hit celebrity, Tiny Tim, Tiptoe Through the Flowers or whatever it is. Tiptoe Through the Meadow. What's the song? It got viral because of TikTok or whatever, but the Tiptoe by the Window or whatever the fuck he says, very weirdly sings. In his Paul Bearer-esque voice. Tiny Tim's story is fascinating, by the way. You look
it is.
I'm not gonna sit here and go through it for the next 10 minutes, but Tiny Tim's like history and music and stuff, and just the personality is fascinating. So do yourself a favor, go to Wikipedia, everybody, go look up Tiny Tim and talk about like just the cultural icon he was for like a short glimmer of time.
I got the flowers for my wedding at the same place Tiny Tim did for his.
Oh wow.
How crazy is that?
Dude, insane. So we kind of lead out here. Your thoughts on this episode? I mean, I thought it was better.
It was
to the point where this Hogan match and Volkov gets put on the Hulk Still Rules DVD compilation they released years later. They identified it as a match that was kind of a focal point on establishing the Hogan character. It didn't feel as important to me, but I guess I could see it because it's very Americana.
Yeah, no, it was very Americana. It wasn't no trend-setting, groundbreaking match for me by any means, but I think going from the very first Saturday Night's Main Event to this episode, you could see the improvements. You could see what they're trying to establish more. You got the silly little things with Mean Gene and what's his name, the Animal, and they're just like there's a lot of that going on, but a lot of, I mean, this had more action. I felt this was a more action-packed match. I loved Piper. I loved, there was a lot of good standouts on here compared to the first episode, and I'm starting to enjoy it a little bit more,
With that being said, let's get to the chaser, pick our favorite part of the 2 episodes Saturday Night's Main Event, and see what you thought, Mike Belcaster.
The chaser.
Oh yeah.
All right, as we finish up the first 2 episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event, what was your favorite thing you pulled away from either one of the episodes? What did you walk away be like, that was the most memorable thing we saw?
It's got to be Georgie Animal Steel and Mean Gene, obviously. I'm not even joking. I thoroughly enjoyed the silliness. I was a big Fuji Vice guy. Like, I love seeing stupid shit like that. And this, like, and it was over the top, but done so elegantly. But match wise, I'm going to give my. Oh, it's a hard one. I'm going to go with Paul Orndorff and Rowdy Piper just because it felt legit. And yeah, I thought it did the job. I really enjoyed it. I love the brawling aspect of it. I love the really, really hard hitting action going on in there. And for what it was quick, but it had impact.
I have to agree with you. I'm going to go with Orndorff and Piper. I thought the brawl was really done well. It was a nice change of pace for the card where nothing else was going on. It really stood out because, like I said, the rest of the work rate wasn't there. It was more about the backstage segments. Mean Gene littered all over the card in a good way. Like, he was all over, hyping up matches. And this format was definitely won by a bygone era. This is not the same format they use on shows.
Yeah.
But it did have a flow to it for sure. And as shitty as the wedding was, I understand why they did it. Like, I understand what the purpose was. And this really set the stage for these main level celebrities coming in with wrestling. And I think we still continue to see that today. WrestleMania is built on celebrity. And as much as people they may not enjoy Bad Bunny, or maybe they do now because he was so good in the ring, but Logan Paul, or even like Little Uzi Vert or anybody when Motorhead came in to play Triple H's theme, there was a tie-in, whether it be celebrity from music, movies, celebrities. It's important to that root. And I think people a lot of times be like, oh no, it was based in wrestling. Trace the lineage back to the boom period for WWF, WWE, but really it has to do with their tie-in with celebrities and following the tea leaves about where things are going and trying to catch things lightning in the bottle. Sometimes they bring people in well after their prime, but sometimes they hit it on the nose, like Mike Tyson. Like, like Mike Tyson is the most popular athlete in the world in wrestling, and it kind of booms up together. So I think this is a button they continue to hit. They will continue to hit in the future of time. They're gonna try to remain culturally relevant, and that's what they're doing here. CYNDI LAUPER may not hit us the same way, but she is very culturally relevant here, where people are watching because she's on it, and people need to understand that.
100%. We couldn't keep rolling with The Undertaker and Fred Durst if it wasn't for CYNDI LAUPER coming out here in the beginning. All right.
I love it. Well, let's close the tab. Let's get ready for next week. Let's do some hyping for the Tavern, all that good stuff. And of course, let's tip our bartenders.
Closing the tab.
All right, as the lights come on the bar, we also have the beautiful thing that we know as All In this weekend. So make sure you guys are getting up early to watch that. Remember, it's an early start time on the East Coast, even earlier for you in the Central Time Zone, Mike Belcaster. I believe it's like, noon for you? Yeah,
it's somewhere. I did the math the other day. Now I forgot all about what time it was, but I'm super, super excited for All In. It's going to be a hell of a show. One of the biggest pro wrestling shows, if not the biggest pro wrestling show in history. And it's going down with MJF and Adam Cole main eventing. I am super, super stoked. Can't wait for it, man. AW's killing it. We got it All Out next week too. How crazy is that? Like this back-to-back shows. I mean, heavy on the wallet, but awesome for fandom, man.
Yeah, I mean, early predictions. MJF, Adam Cole. You think Adam Cole walks out with the title here as a heel?
Oh, I have a little mindset that something's going to happen in the tag match, the Aussie Open, and there's going to be some friction going into that main event. And
I can't wait.
Only time will tell. But I'm hoping just for history's sake, I kind of want MJF versus Punk down the line. So I want to see, MJF take the W here and go into possibly All Out. Who knows? I mean,
I mean, it's set up right for that, and I think it's going to be very interesting to watch. Of course, Wembley's going to be rocking almost 80,000, more than 80,000 people in the building, and
it's
breaking records outside of that. The Korea show, the Worlds Collide show, which was not. It was like not voluntary attendance, not paid attendance. It was they don't count that one, but it broke SummerSlam 92, WrestleMania 3, the Dallas WrestleMania from 32. So this is a big number that will stand for a little bit of time before WWE gets their claws on it again. And the big lie continues.
250,000 people. in the Allstate Arena in Chicago.
So next week's show is going to be episode 2 of season 5. It's going to be September 1st, 2023. We're going to be covering 2 episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event, the third one and the fourth. The third one will be from November 2nd, 1985, headlined by Hogan and Andre teaming up against King Kong Bundy and Big John Studd from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Saturday Night's Main Event number 4 is going to be on January 4th, 1986, headlined by Hogan versus Terry Funk for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship from Tampa, Florida. And I'll be honest with you, one of the reasons I picked Saturday Night's Main Event to cover was because I saw Terry Funk got a title shot. And I'm like, we have to cover this. And I watched the match recently, and I can't wait to go back and cover it with you.
I think Terry Funk's been in every season we've shot, right?
Yes, he had. Well, was he in Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Yeah.
Oh, he was. Yes.
Yeah, right in the beginning. Yeah. So he was in WCW. He was in ECW. He was in WWF. He's in Smoky Mountain. And now he's here.
We thought Foley was the ultimate. He's everywhere.
it's the GOAT, man. Until Jack Foley pops up here randomly on a Saturday night.
Oh my God! Well, we'll get him in the late ones.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's going to be there as a non-active competitor on the build to like WrestleMania 22. I think that's the ones we're going to be covering later in the year.
I love it. Hell yeah!
But yeah, get some more shilling in for yourself, and then lead us out as Jesse Ventura, because I want to hear big time right now.
Oh yes, absolutely. But guys, go watch Fig Night. Go watch the wrap ups. Tune in to everything. Why plug myself when we could just plug the Turnbuckle Tavern, as you see so beautifully right here on your screen. theturnbuckletavern.com. Join us everywhere. We're on every platform possible. I think we got to change the bird to an X at this point. I don't know. Might be something different by the time this airs. Who gives a shit? just go to theturnbuckletavern.com, and by God, by the power of Jesse, the Body Ventura, and the love and smoke in the Bajas, please tune in next week as we cover everything Saturday Night's Main Event right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. Brother, let me tell you something, Monsoon. I think it's time to cut it out.